So the next one is called difficulty necessitates facilitation. Difficulty necessitates facilitation. In other words, al-mashaqqatu tajlib al-taysir. If there's difficulty, the Sharia says things need to be made easy for people. Because Allah, yuridu bikum al-yusr, yuridu Allah bikum al-yusr. Allah doesn't want difficulty for you. He wants ease. He gave us the Sharia to make things easy, not to make them hard. And so, لا تشددوا على أنفسكم فيشدد الله عليكم. Don't make things hard for yourself because Allah will let you do that and then you'll destroy yourself. So don't make things hard. Things are meant to be easy, which does not mean things are meant to be easy. It means that the responsibility should not be undue duress. It shouldn't be to the point where, that you're really having a hard time. You live in a place where it's daytime 20 hours a day and 4 hours it's nighttime. You don't fast 20 hours. You'd work it out to the closest place if you want, or some people say Mecca. The point is that you don't, because that's mashaqqa. It's harmful for the body. If a woman's pregnant and the doctor says don't fast, or she feels that it's harmful for her fetus, she doesn't fast. Right? Allah says, no, don't do that. Don't destroy yourself. If it's hard to do something, Allah gives us ease. If you can't pray standing up, you pray sitting down. And that's a principle in usul that we have to understand. I mean, the deen is not, Allah doesn't need us to torture ourselves. It's not, there's no benefit in that.
What if you're pregnant and the pregnancy is causing like harm to the person? Should you have the child anyway and take the risk?
If a physician says that the pregnancy has become a danger to the life of the woman, then the pregnancy can be terminated by Sharia.
But if he doesn't,
and that would be a judgment call. But the woman's life is over the life of the child by Sharia. As long as it's unborn, it's over the life. The woman's life is over the life of the child.
So there's no time period until where she's allowed to, like where if it's too late, it's too far gone?
No. If they feel that, if a doctor who's knowledgeable in his field feels that there is a serious danger to this woman in continuing the pregnancy, that she probably will die. There has to be a probability. غَرَبَةَ الظَّنِّ. He will say, if this continues, this woman is going to lose her life.
So then if she goes ahead and takes a chance and has it anyway?
It's not. But she could do that technically. I mean,
what if she dies? Is that haram?
If she went to the doctor, though, Allahu Alam. I mean, if she went to the doctor, generally you don't have to go to a doctor by Sharia. But if you go to a doctor, then it becomes binding on you to follow the guidelines of the doctor. You don't have to go to the doctor. If you're sick, there's nothing in Sharia that says you have to go to a doctor. But if you do, then it's incumbent upon you to follow the guidelines of the physician.
Anything?
What's that?
Anything that says no? I mean, if you go to a doctor...
Well, I mean, if he says, you should eat a little less or something like that, I mean, But if he says, look, you have diabetes, and if you take sugar, you're going to kill yourself. Sugar becomes haram for you, and it's a tahrim aradi, it's a tahrim that's related to circumstance. It is not haram by its nature, but because of a special condition, it becomes prohibited for you. But if you never went to the doctor, then you don't have to follow that guideline. If you die, mashallah, you die. But by Sharia, you do not have to go to a doctor.
What if you doubt their...
You can go to get a second opinion. Nothing in Islam says you can't get a second opinion. Go to a homeopath, right? Nothing in Sharia says you have to follow one school of medicine. Just like you don't have to follow one madhab. There's different madhabs in medicine. Chinese madhab, right? Imam Yellow Emperor. Right? Homeopathic madhab, Imam Hahnemann. And you can follow different madhab of medicine. You don't go to a witch doctor, like voodoo or something. It has to be based on something real.
Back to the difficulty necessitates facilitation with your children. You have children of age, and they say it's too difficult to wear hijab to school, and they're in a public situation. should you bid? Should you facilitate that? And that's,
Yeah, that is not, I wouldn't, no. You see, because first of all, they don't have to go to school by Sharia. There's no law in Sharia that says you have to go to school. All you have to do is learn your Fard Ain by Sharia. That's it. There's no law that says you have to have a BA. Right? Really? There's no law in Sharia that says all you have to know, you don't even have to be literate by Sharia. You have to simply know the basic rules, know how to say Fatiha, and these things, right? So if somebody's in school, I mean, I really think it's very detrimental to send our children to non-Muslim schools. I think it's detrimental to send them to Muslim schools. I think schools altogether are detrimental. Right? Now, some people say I have very radical ideas about education, but that's where I am. Sorry about that, you know. And I'm not. My opinion is just my opinion. It's not based on. I mean, I'm not just saying this to be like, you know, radical or something. Really, I'm not. I mean, it's based on thinking and studying the matter. And I am willing to sit with anybody who's done as much deliberation and reading and studying as I have about the situation. But somebody who just comes and they're completely brainwashed by the very system that I'm saying is really bad for the Muslims, and they start telling me that I'm wrong and they haven't looked even at any of the literature out there. I don't, there's no basis for argument, there's no basis for discussion, right? I mean, somebody, you know, I had a friend of mine, he's a hardcore technologist, and I told him, look, let me give you some books. If you read those books, we can talk about this. But if you're going to come to me with your ideology, I know what your ideology is. I've studied it, and I'm not convinced. But I've studied people from, like MIT, you know, Langdon Winter, he's a professor of the philosophy of technology, you know, Jacques Ellul, others, who have very serious critiques about technology. Which is not saying all technology is bad, but there's questions there, there's philosophical implications to technology. If you're willing to do the studying and research, then we have some grounds for discourse. But if you're just going to, you know, tell me you're wrong and I'm right, no. And it's not fair, right? You know, opinions have to be based on something. It just can't be, you know, no, you have to base it on, it has to be founded. And I'm perfectly willing to admit, I know, and I'm with absolute certainty that, you know, I make a lot of mistakes. My judgment is not, you know, it's not soundproof. No, I make mistakes. I could be wrong, right? I could be right. You have to listen to the argument, decide for yourself, right? But don't just say because you disagree with it and you haven't really given it thought. That's not, there's nothing there.
Are there any alternatives that you suggest for Muslim children
For school,
for schooling?
I think very small groups of, you know, like a homeschooling effort type, within small groups. I think, you know, there's ample evidence, there's an argument about socialization, that schools provide this thing called socialization. I think there's ample evidence to really disprove that. In fact, children actually usually turn out much more humane when they're not exposed to the quote-unquote socialization that goes on in a lot of schools.
I have two questions then. It doesn't necessitate or neglect the responsibility of the woman just because the man may or may not.
And no, that's a good point. I think that's a very good point. I told one group of women, I said, you know, women have a jihad, and their jihad is men. And that's a hadith. A woman in her house is like a mujahida. She has to put up with not only the children, but the big child a lot of times, right? And she's a mujahida. And so one of these women at this question and answer this and asked me, well, why should we do our jihad if the men aren't doing their jihad? And I said, because you don't want to lower yourselves down to their level. I mean, why should you abandon your jihad because the men have abandoned their jihad? No, get your reward with Allah. Really. Get your reward with Allah. Why?
The second question was,
So, I mean, that's a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that.
What was the point?
You know, that what I was saying about the fact that men have these double standards, right? That they're in disguise in this culture. Muslims are literally in disguise in this culture. And yet the women are not. They're out front. You know, you go to the grocery market with a hijab, and that is a statement. I mean, my wife went to this bank, and she was getting her own account, because her money's her money, it's not my money. She was getting her own account, and the teller, the woman said to her, "That's so nice that you're able to do this." Really, she's looking at this hijab and, wow, you can get your own account. Well, what's he going to do next? Let you drive a car? Right? See, because that's the way a lot of these people think. They just think that automatically the best ones are these, Muslim women that are like PhDs and doctors with the hijab. Because that's just like, wait a second. Huh? You must have got it in Karachi. No, it was Harvard, actually.
My second question was, the Dunkirk principle, sometimes has been used for fighting halal meat in America. Is that
Okay, good point. Meat is not a necessity in Sharia. And in the old days, most Muslims used to eat meat if they were wealthy, middle class, once a week on Friday. And if they were poor, on the Eids. Why do you think we sacrifice on the Eid? It's to give people that all year have not had meat. So traditionally, the Muslims were literally semi-vegetarian. The Prophet was, technically, the Prophet ﷺ would go under that category. He was not a meat eater. Most of his meals did not have meat in them. And the proof of that is clearly in the Muwatta when Sayyidina Umar says, beware of meat, because it has an addiction like the addiction of wine. And the other hadith, in the Muwatta, there's a chapter called Bab al-Lahm, the chapter of Lahm, chapter of meat. Both are from Sayyidina Umar. And Umar, during his Khilafah, prohibited people from eating meat 2 days in a row. He only allowed them to eat every other day, and the Khalifa has that right to do that. He did not let people eat meat every day. And he saw one man eating meat every day in the Muwatta, and he said to him, every time you get hungry, you go out and buy meat. Right? In other words, every time your nafs wants meat, you go out and buy it. And the man said, Ya Amir al-Mu'min, ana qarim, which in Arabic, qarim means I love meat. He's a carnivore. He loves meat. And Sayyidina Umar said that it would be better for you to roll up your tummy a little bit so that other people can eat. Now Umar, if there was a prophet, after the prophet, it would have been Umar. And that is really verging on prophecy, that statement. Because if you study modern meat industry, you will find out that a lot of the famine in the world is a direct result of the overconsumption of meat in countries like the United States and Canada and Europe. Because the amount of grain that is needed to produce 1 pound of meat, right, is much greater than the amount that you need to produce grain itself. So, and beef in particular, I really recommend Rifkin's book Beyond Beef, because it's an extraordinary book. It's interesting. Baqarah is also, chapter of the Quran. Kill the cow, because beef-eating societies are, just have massive impact on the environment, on natural resources, on all these things. And traditionally, the Muslims were not cow eaters. They were sheep and lamb when they did eat meat. Which meat is not, cow meat is not, it's not haram, it's not makruh. So I'm not saying that.
What was the author?
Jeremy Rifkin. It's called Beyond Beef.
I'm wondering what your opinion is about the argument that, particularly like in high school situations or sometimes on the job, that Muslims are interacting and are forced to interact with people of the other gender. And then when they come into Muslim circles, they have no interaction with people of the other gender. And that maybe there would be some benefit for Muslims in Muslim circles to have respectful interaction, because otherwise, particularly like in the high school situation, they start dating non-Muslims.
Right.
Because that's who they learn, that's who they get to know.
Right. This is a big problem in this country. It's a major problem. The delaying of marriage is a problem by Sharia, because it's better for young people to marry early. Sayyidina Ali was 17, Fatima was 15 when they married. And that's really when you have serious problem. That is the real period of trouble, is that what they call here kind of an adolescent period. In more traditional cultures, people begin to act like adults at about 11, 12. Really, they do. I mean, it's quite interesting to meet a 12-year-old Mauritanian boy as opposed to a 12-year-old American boy. There's an incredible difference in the intellect and maturity. So that's a problem. In terms of what's called ikhtilat, there's really nothing in Sharia about ikhtilat. It's not a traditional word, it's not a word, and that's the word modern Arabs use for mixture of male and female. The first community, I find it really hard to believe that they were as obsessive about these matters as some modern type of Muslims. Personally, just from my own reading and things like that, I think there's a basic adab that's expected. You'll get into some differences of opinion, like in the Maliki school, the face of a woman is not considered a part of her awra, her nakedness. So it's not prohibited for a man. It only doesn't look upon her with lust to see her face or her hands by Sharia. Now there's other opinions that the face of a woman, particularly a young woman, it's that a man should not look at it. And the ayah in the Quran, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ, tell the believing men to lower their gaze. There's some, difference of opinion about that. The Malikis understood it to mean one way. Some, Fakhruddin al-Razi mentions the min there is for tab'id. It's for lowering the gaze, not completely, like looking down like this, but not contemplating her mahasin, her zina, not looking upon her lustfully, things like that. So you're going to get difference of opinion that are related to cultures. And the ulama talk about when times get corrupt, it's preferable to be more strict, to interpret things on a more strict, because you have a lot of just bad people. And unfortunately, in a lot of the Muslim countries, the behavior of the men is quite frightening. I mean, of the high, you were just recently in a country, in Latifa, in a country, where the men's behavior is shameful on the streets. The goggling of women, shameless, thank you. There's a shameless behavior on the streets, the goggling of women. I mean, even in some of the quote-unquote strictest Muslim countries, you're shocked at the type of accosting that goes on to some of the women. And I have personal friends, Americans that have lived, who became Muslim, and these women went with their husbands, and they're shocked, because these things don't happen to them in this country. Really? And these come from Muslim men. Now, I really think, this is fasad. I mean, this is corruption. This is the fasad. The society has become corrupt. And at that point, women, we need to protect our women from that type of abuse, because by Sharia, that is abuse. In fact, the ayah in the Quran about the hijab is in order that you are not abused, not accosted. It's a protective measure against those type of people. Now, in the Muwatta of Imam Malik, and if you don't think Imam Malik is from the Salaf, right, then who's from the Salaf? Because he's from the Qurun al-Mushahada bil-Khayr, from those periods of time that the Prophet testified to their uprightness, and he was from the most virtuous of those people by the consensus of the Ummah. In the Muwatta, he was asked about, what do you think about a man, can his wife sit with his company and eat with them? And Imam Malik said, I don't see any harm in it if they're correct, if there's adab. They don't become frivolous, there's not, improper intimacy, there's not, right? And a woman can come in to the gathering and do these things according to Imam Malik radiallahu anhu, as long as there's some basic adab done. So, I think you beware of extremes, I mean, Imam al-Busayri says, beware of the two extremes of satiety and hunger. And then he says, and maybe hunger in many cases is worse than satiety. In other words, to go to the extreme of deprivation is often worse than going to the extreme of overindulgence. So if we become too Puritan, right, this is what happened in this country. They became Puritans. And boom, now look at the country. We've gone to the complete opposite. Muslims are balanced. We're the middle people. If you have too much, if you have this type of Puritanism, in a culture, what happens is it goes to the opposite. And people become, so in our quote-unquote most Puritan of countries, pornography is a major problem. The accosting of women is a major problem. Rape is a major problem. I mean, this is a reality. You see? So Muslims traditionally very balanced cultures and balanced societies. And, you know, I've been in cultures where they're very Muslim and there is interaction between the men and the women and they don't have these social problems. But it's done with adab, there's not like a complete, you know, oh, how you doing? And, you know, it's done with adab and things like that. Mm-hmm.
Another question on the principle 3. For example, like in America, it's difficult to go to school. And so like college rather, some people take out loans and they say that because it's a necessity in society to do that, is that
Well, what do you think?
I didn't hear it.
You know, people take out usury loans to go to college. Right, is that permissible? It's not according to what I was taught, and I don't know, maybe there's 1-800-FATWA, you get all kinds of answers, but again, college is not a necessity, nor is making a lot of money. You know, in Sharia, necessity is literally when one of these 5 things is endangered. That is necessity. If you want to understand necessity, when prohibited things are permissible, mashaqqa tajlib at-taysir is not to that extreme. There's another qa'idah which says ad-darurat tabih al-mahdurat. This is not the same principle here. A car or a home. As far as I know, a car is not a necessity. That renting is, you can rent. A house is not a necessity. In America, a car, Allah Ta'ala. I mean, I think there might be a case for people in terms of livelihood, being able to support their family and things like that. Allah Ta'ala. I don't know. So I'm just going to say I don't know about that. I really don't. I don't know. Muslim, it's mustahab to learn how to read the Quran. After Fatiha and one surah, memorized it by heart, it's mustahab. It's not a wajib to learn how to read Arabic. Well, iqra means recite. That's the primary meaning of iqra. The vast majority of Sahaba were illiterate. The Prophet said, Inna ummatun ummiyya, we're an illiterate people. La naktubu wa la nahsubu. I mean, reading is encouraged very strongly. And it is a fard kifaya that there are people in the community that learn grammar, learn these things, no doubt. And it's highly encouraged, but you can't say it's a wajib. In other words, an illiterate person is not in a wrong action. They don't have to make tawbah from being illiterate if they learn their fard ayn through oral teaching, which is traditionally how much of the teaching in Islam was done. Many women, very righteous women historically, did not know how to read or write. But they knew their fard ayn and things like that historically.
As far as like the university or college, is it clear to seek knowledge?
Seek knowledge in that. Whenever you see knowledge, alif lam, seek knowledge, al-ilm. It is talking about Sharia knowledge. Now that includes fard kifaya. In other words, there has to be enough people learning the kifaya sciences. So that seeking medicine, there has to be a group within the community that is fulfilling these obligations, but not everybody.
So is it the community's responsibility to ensure the provision in order for them to get education, or is it allowed to take out loans to provide that service to the community?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know too many people that are going to university now to fulfill a fard kifaya. And the proof is they don't know their fard ayn. And you cannot seek a fard kifaya until you learn your fard ayn. Right? So they're just deluding themselves. Right? And to give you an example, in the Bay Area, there's one doctor to about every 100 people. In Mauritania, there's one doctor to every 10,000 people. Right? So a Muslim going to California to practice medicine, he's not fulfilling a fard kifaya, believe you me.
Does the point of difficulty depend on individual, or is it determined by
No, there's rules. I mean, the mashaqqa is clear when there's undue duress. And in certain situations we know, like if you're traveling and you're finding it difficult to fast, then you can break your fast.
But some people could handle different levels of certain kinds of...
And it would be at the individual level, absolutely, that's a good point. It would be based on an individual. Some people can endure things that other people can't. I mean, to give you an example, Sheikh Khatri, when he was here, he had an eye operation. The physician wanted to give him anesthesia. He refused it. And he's a Bedouin they're tough, and he's an older man. He said, I don't want anything that affects my intellect. And he asked the doctor, is it going to affect my intellect? He said, yes, but it's going to hurt. He said, I can stand the pain. I don't want something, I'd rather bear the pain than have my intellect affected. So they actually did a cataract surgery without him having, and the doctor was amazed that, he was amazed that he did, but I mean, I lived with those people. I saw a man, this really heavy camel load stepped right on his foot and just walked, and he just, like that, just kept walking. I was like,
How do you say you need to follow the doctor's wishes?
What's that? No, the doctor gave him a choice. He said, you don't have to do this, but I'm highly recommending it. Yeah, had he told him, I will not do the surgery unless you do this, then and even Sheikh Khatri said, I don't mind going blind because blindness is a kafara for wrong actions. So he said, I don't mind. If I go blind, that's Allah is purifying me of wrong actions. He said, in fact, he was worried about getting his eyesight back from the cataract surgery and the lens replacement. Because he said, he realized the cataract, it's like kafara, and so he's kind of, that's a level of taqwa, I mean, mashallah. The Prophet said, tadawi, use medicine, it's not a good thing.